They did not fall in a single night of fire. They did not leave behind ruins large enough to warn us. They did not write final messages begging the future to remember them. They simply vanished. Entire civilizations, millions of lives, complex societies, advanced knowledge, disappeared so completely that history itself seemed to inhale them and never exhale again. No mass graves, no collapsed capitals, only silence where thriving worlds once stood. For centuries, scholars believed human progress was a straight line, but these lost peoples prove civilization is far more fragile than we are willing to accept. Across deserts, jungles, and oceanic plains, archaeologists keep encountering the same disturbing pattern. Vast settlements abandoned without signs of invasion. Sophisticated infrastructure left to rot without struggle. Tools still resting where hands last held them. Homes emptied as if families walked away midday and never returned. Whatever ended these societies was not slow decline. It was sudden, final, and powerful enough to erase them almost entirely from human memory. Some of these cultures engineered massive water systems centuries ahead of their time. Others mapped the skies with uncanny accuracy. They traded across continents, governed enormous populations, and built cities rivaling modern metropolises in scale. Yet within a generation, sometimes within a decade, they were gone. No clear enemy, no recorded catastrophe, only unanswered questions buried beneath layers of soil and time. Historians argue over drought, climate shifts, disease, internal collapse, and social rebellion. But none of these explanations fully account for the speed, the completeness, and the eerie lack of transitional evidence. Civilizations do not usually evaporate. Empires crumble slowly. Populations scatter gradually. These did neither. They vanished like a light suddenly switched off. And the most unsettling truth is this: every one of these lost worlds believed they were stable, secure, too advanced to fall. Their leaders could not imagine total collapse. Their people planned futures that never came. Their cities were meant to last forever. Tonight, we explore three civilizations that disappeared so thoroughly that history almost forgot they ever existed at all. What force is powerful enough to erase humanity's greatest achievements without leaving a trace? And could it happen again to us? Long before their disappearance became a mystery, these civilizations stood as pillars of stability in regions once thought incapable of sustaining large populations. In the dense Amazon basin, a vast network of settlements flourished centuries before European arrival. For generations, the rainforest was believed to be untouched wilderness. But beneath its canopy, archaeologists have uncovered geometric earthworks, engineered soil known as terra preta, and carefully constructed road systems linking ceremonial centers. These communities reshaped the forest itself, managing agriculture on a scale once deemed impossible. They were not primitive tribes surviving at nature's mercy. They were planners, builders, and environmental engineers who transformed hostile terrain into controlled abundance. Then, within a remarkably short span, the settlements were abandoned. The engineered soils remained fertile. The roads remained intact, but the people were gone. Across the Pacific Ocean, on a remote island later named Rapa Nui, a society capable of carving and transporting monumental stone figures developed in near isolation. The Moai statues still stand, staring inland as if guarding a vanished population. For years, historians blamed ecological collapse, suggesting the islanders destroyed their own environment through deforestation. Yet new evidence challenges that narrative. Pollen analysis, tool distribution, and dietary remains suggest a more complex picture. Signs of social adaptation appear even late in the island's occupation. If environmental destruction alone were responsible, the timeline does not fully align. Something accelerated their decline, and it came faster than slow ecological mismanagement would predict. Far to the north, in Greenland, Norse settlers established farms and churches at the edge of the medieval world. They endured freezing winters and isolation for centuries. Records show trade with Europe continued even as temperatures dropped during the Little Ice Age. Yet by the 15th century, their settlements stood empty. Livestock bones reveal hardship, but not violent annihilation. Churches remained standing. Tools were left behind. No mass exodus is documented. The Inuit communities nearby survived the same climate shift. The Norse did not. In each case, warning signs existed: subtle environmental stress, shifting trade routes, political rigidity, cultural resistance to adaptation. But none of these alone explain the abrupt silence that followed. What happens when a society cannot, or will not, change fast enough to survive forces it does not fully understand? The disappearance of these civilizations was not marked by heroic last stands or recorded final moments. It was defined by absence, by lives interrupted so suddenly that daily routines were frozen in time. In the Amazon, pollen layers reveal an abrupt return of wild forest growth, not a slow abandonment. Fields were not gradually reduced. They were reclaimed almost immediately by nature. This suggests populations did not migrate over generations. They left or died rapidly. Some scholars argue epidemic disease swept through the region after early indirect contact with outsiders long before Europeans formally arrived, spreading faster than any army could march. Others propose catastrophic flooding or prolonged mega-droughts that destroyed food systems in a single devastating cycle. But neither explanation fully accounts for how organized societies with advanced land management vanished almost overnight. On Rapa Nui, signs of conflict emerge suddenly in the archaeological record. Obsidian spear points appear where farming tools once dominated. Fortified caves suggest fear and retreat. Yet even this violence seems too brief to explain total population collapse. A growing theory suggests that introduced diseases, possibly brought by early European sailors decades before formal colonization, may have torn through a genetically isolated population with catastrophic speed. Social structures fractured, food production collapsed. Within a few generations, the people who built the statues were nearly gone. In Greenland, the Norse settlements show chilling evidence of desperation. Cattle bones replace fish remains, indicating a stubborn refusal to adopt Inuit survival methods, even as resources vanished. Starvation marks appear on skeletons, but the final phase shows something stranger. Some homes were carefully locked. Valuables were not looted. Boats were not found in numbers large enough to suggest evacuation. It is as if the population faded away rather than fled. Across all three cases, collapse was fast, chaotic, and psychologically devastating. Systems that had worked for centuries failed in moments. Leadership structures broke. Cultural identity turned into a liability instead of strength. Once stability cracked, everything unraveled at terrifying speed. Civilizations are not destroyed only by enemies. Sometimes they are undone by the very rules that once made them powerful. But after the dust settled, something even darker followed. Not just collapse, erasure. When these civilizations disappeared, the world did not mourn them. There were no global records to preserve their stories. No surviving nations strong enough to demand remembrance. Nature and time performed the final act of destruction, burying cities, swallowing roads, and rewriting landscapes until it seemed as though millions of lives had never existed at all. In the Amazon, European explorers would later describe endless wilderness, unaware they were walking through the remains of one of the largest human-engineered ecosystems on Earth. Forest growth concealed plazas, canals, and settlements for centuries. The myth of an untouched jungle was born not from reality, but from the aftermath of collapse. A civilization erased so thoroughly it reshaped scientific understanding of the region itself. On Rapa Nui, outsiders encountered a small, struggling population living among colossal statues built by ancestors whose society had vanished. The monuments became riddles without answers. Early observers assumed cultural primitiveness, never imagining the island once supported tens of thousands in a complex social system. History rewrote collapse as inferiority. In Greenland, the abandoned churches and farms became silent monuments to stubborn survival strategies that failed in a changing world. The Norse disappearance faded into legend, while the adaptable Inuit endured. Collapse did not favor strength, wealth, or technology. It favored flexibility. What unites these lost civilizations is not drought, disease, or isolation alone. It is how fragile complexity truly is. When environmental pressure, social rigidity, and sudden shocks converge, even the most advanced societies can unravel faster than anyone expects. Perhaps the most unsettling consequence is how easily humanity forgets its own failures. Entire worlds can vanish with no collective memory, their achievements erased, their lessons buried. Modern civilization rests on systems just as intricate: global supply chains, climate stability, technological dependence, political cohesion. We too believe we are too advanced to disappear, yet history whispers a darker truth. Civilizations do not always fall with noise and fire. Sometimes they vanish quietly, and when they do, the world keeps moving. The forests grow back, the ruins fade, and the future walks over their graves without ever knowing. If entire societies could disappear once without warning and without trace, what makes us so certain we will not be next?